Welcome to the Card Diary by Hobby S. Thompson. I am your host, Denny Cards. Thank you for tuning in. It is episode 90. And if you clicked on the title of this episode, you will see a little bit of a clickbaity title. I call this the East Coast National versus Culture Collision. Of course, it wasn't really an either or because those two shows were not pit against each other. One occurred in mid August. The other one occurred in mid September. It's not 100% meant to be clickbaity because I do want to juxtapose these two particular shows and also add in Fanatics Fest. But I kind of like the idea of that because, a little preview of what I'm going to talk about. I almost feel like it's kind of like the more traditional card show and then kind of like the modern idea of a card show. And so, before I do this, before I get into that, I did want to, I guess, acknowledge or say that even though I've tried to come out with a podcast episode per week, even with all of this travel, with all of these card shows, which I'm about to get into. The last solo episode that I did for this podcast was published on August 21st. It was called episode 86. With this being episode 90, there were three in between. But in that episode, I called it the eBay sales and lessons learned. And I really kind of hyper focused on the eBay sales and kind of like online, selling. And so much has happened in this past month for me in the hobby, but just focusing solely because so much has happened outside of the card show scene, but focusing solely on the card show circuit scene. I guess I'll start off with the titular episode. What am I trying to say? The title of this episode, East Coast National, same weekend as Fanatics Fest. So that was in mid-August, and then the week right after that was my first time being an ambassador, which is a word I know some people are so tired of me and other people saying and hearing. But I was a ambassador for a local card show that was only like 15 minutes away from me, driving. And, I guess an offshoot of what happened from that, there was this kind of like scammer situation. And, I personally was not scammed, but someone who now I guess I do consider a card friend, but they were scammed. And that is something that I, how do I put it? More it's something that I've grappled with. I've talked about it on Instagram briefly, but it's real life people, real life situation, real money exchanged, and basically scammed out of, and it's a real life situation that I'm not trying to make content out of it for the sake of content. If anything, what I wanted to do was to make it educational, or what could you do to prevent this from happening from you, or what are the signs? But it's really tough because without giving too much away, there is an active police investigation going on. So that's something that I can't really, I don't want to muck things up. I don't want to make things worse. I want to help, but I also am not here to make this sensational and make this into a situation where I do more harm than good. So that's what I'm gonna say for now. And let's move on to the next week after that, which was another local card show, which was just an hour drive. And I did not plan to attend this show, but I was talking to the card show promoter, and I just no one pressured me, no one forced me to, but I'm glad I went. I had a lot of fun, but I did not plan to attend that because those the back-to-back weekends of those 2 weeks, it was already, I just felt like kind of like tired, a little bit run down. So no rest for the weary. The weekend after that, it was a weekend of rest, no card shows, did some hobby stuff for sure. But that was kind of like the week when I turned 42. um if I'm listening to myself say this, happy belated birthday to yourself. And then the weekend after that, it was Culture Collision, being in a social media content creation team, part of the team, media ambassador, whatever you want to call it. Did so many vlogs, so much content. Did, also first time at Cards HQ. And then after the week after that, which is this past weekend from the time I'm recording this, which is what am I trying to say? Like 10 days after Culture Collision? I don't know. But it was another local card show, this one being 45 minutes away from where I am in Northern Virginia. And for that one, I didn't go to the whole show. I just caught the tail end of it to make one transaction, which I'm really glad that the person who I transacted with, who was the promoter of the card show, honored the deal that we kind of, digitally handshake on. Yeah, but I'm slowly trying to rid myself of just bulk cards, value bin cards. And so that's something that I do plan to make content on in the future. So having said all that, I just saying all of that, just mentioned 5 card shows, I guess 6 if you include East Coast National and Fanatics Fest in the same weekend. Um, that's a lot. 6 card shows and 6 weekends. I'm just getting exhausted just saying it out loud and just thinking about it. And I guess the big elephant in the room, at least it is for me, is that, and it's a topic I touched on uh maybe more than lightly, but not heavily, with Clark from 5 Card Guys. Shout out to them. And if you're listening to this, Clark, it was so great to have you on our co-hosting joint episode. But it was the fact that I did not go to the National in Cleveland. I don't want to rehash all of that. I had this in my notes just to mention that there was an elephant in the room. I I didn't go to the National. There was this whole ambassador thing again. Tired of that word. I am too. But, the silver lining with not going, the silver lining amidst that dark cloud, for me personally, the dark cloud, um, which has now passed. I mean, this dark cloud is, you know, in my rear view, and I feel so much better for it. And things happen in life for a reason, but it really it lit a fire under me. I really feel like that. It put a chip on my shoulder, which can be good and bad, because you don't want to be too chippy, or you don't want to have too big of a chip on your shoulder, I guess. But it really gave me a lot of motivation, and it gave me, it definitely made me feel kind of like inferior when it happened, but then also like I kind of felt like I knew what I was doing. It also gave a lot of awareness to the kind of ambassador and how in some ways it's silly. The title is silly, but then also it gave more visibility to the national and its ambassadorship program. And it led to people, reaching out, being like, hey, that didn't work out. Would you like to do that with us? And so I think that more good came out of it than bad. And so, for me, I won't go into all of that. It is behind me, but it is definitely part of me now. It's part of my, we talk about you go through life and things happen to you, and it's like the baggage. So, I will very much admit it is part of my emotional baggage in the hobby as a content creator, so to speak. So let me pause there. Actually, let me power through. And then I'll take a break. 6 card shows, 6 weekends. I The analogy that I have, I guess, is like, do you remember when you were younger? Because I think for the most part, my podcast, or I know I'm gonna do a live video of this for YouTube, but for the most part, this being my older, I don't know, driving kids to school demographic, the middle-aged man, 98% of you, or 92% of you being men, um, you would go out with your friends when you were younger. You would have a night out, and you would have so much fun. And yet, if you know, fill in what you believe to be too much fun, but if you had too much fun, you would just be tired the next day. So for me, I feel like in general, my partying days are gone, and unless it's a week, not a weekend, unless it's a wedding, I went to 2 this past, summer, which is I feel like when you're younger, when you're in your 20s, you almost get sick of weddings. Especially, like, if you're, like, one of the last of your friends to get married, you're just like, "Oh my gosh, like, another wedding, and I gotta pay for this, I gotta pay for that." It's gotta be worse for the women, the ladies. You gotta, the bridesmaid dresses that you wear one time in your whole life, and you gotta, then you gotta deal with the bride telling you what to do, and, the classic saying of bridezilla. For dudes, I don't know, like, yeah, tux rentals, and there are definitely groomzillas, but, for the most part, whether you have, forgetting about the attire, it's more of the travel, right? The time off, the money spent, and all of that. But in your 30s, you start to appreciate it more, and you're like, wow, this isn't happening every weekend of my summer, where you have like no money. So I feel like in your 20s, you have like no money and you have all the time. And then in your 30s, you have a decent balance. And then as you get older, you have more money but less time. And so in my 40s now, because again, I'm 42, it's like you almost wish for weddings. You like yearn for them. You're like, oh my gosh, who's getting married? When's the next wedding I can go to where there's dancing, an open bar, joy celebration, just, a reason for friends to get together, all of that. So, well, of course, I went on a huge tangent on about weddings, but I think that what I just said should resonate with a lot of you. And if it doesn't, mazel, good for you. I'm happy that you, are tired out of weddings. But so when you just go out and have a blast, and the next day you're just so tired. That's kind of how I feel, where all of these card shows that I mentioned, I had so much fun. I guess, the most recent one where I didn't really go to the whole card show, I just went to the tail end. That it wasn't that it wasn't fun, it's just that I didn't have the full card show experience, right? I mean, the dealer tables are all gone except for, like, a couple and all of that stuff. But you just it's the energy, the excitement, the electricity of a card show, and I just love it. It's almost like, it's like, not a party. It's not like, well, I guess Culture Collision did have music and all that, but it's not. It's about the cards, but it's also about the people, right? I mean, the cardboard is why we come to this hobby, but the people is why we stay. At least that's my working theory. And for me, uh, I've had so much fun these past 6 weeks, but it's not. I'm so tired. I'm so tired because that's just the card show scene. Because then you add on, the podcast, the content, the Instagram content, the YouTube stuff, the vlogs, just everything. Submitting things for grading, selling on eBay, selling, um, buying, selling, trading. I just recently started trying Veriswap and putting things triple cross posting. Most recently, I started doing posting first on like literally back to back to back, kind of like one card. It would take me 10 minutes to do, or maybe a little bit quicker as I got faster. But I would do eBay, my card post, then Veriswap, every single card. And I'm not talking about like dollar cards. I'm talking about like, slabs, at least, $20 or whatever. But it adds up. And I, it's, see, I'm almost at the 15-minute mark, and I haven't even gotten to the topic. Um, I'm going to have to reserve this topic and or issue, whatever, whatever call it, for another episode. But everything I just said makes me think this is too much. It's not a good balance. I do have a young family, and it's a lot of time away from my family. I feel burned out. I feel I feel a lot of things, and I haven't fully thought them out. I haven't fully fleshed them out. I haven't articulated them, not just to this podcast audience or my content, to myself. I haven't fully like I've thought about it. I'm like, oh, burnout, like when I have these guests on, I want to talk about, just this idea of are there too many card shows and is this oversaturation? But I don't know. Let me think about that some more, but I don't want to take up any more time. I do want to dive into this topic. So sorry for the abrupt change, but yeah, I think I'm just not ready to talk about it yet, um, because it has been a lot of time away. I guess the good thing is that there aren't youth sports. I love coaching basketball. It's youth basketball. I don't. This is the first season coming up in the winter where I might not do it. Um, and I'll get into that maybe in a future episode. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't fully thought out, and, once you press record, sometimes you just don't know where this is gonna go, but let me pause here, let me gather my thoughts. Actually, I think I put in here my notes. I do wanna do one, read, and so let me do, like, a sponsor read, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so that got a little bit too deep too quickly. This is my sponsor read for my card post. So there's no script, no talking points, and after this, it's not even a read. It's more of like just me talking about it for about a minute, minute and a half, and then I'm gonna go right into this the topic, the main reason for this episode. So here's the thing about my card post. The easiest way to talk about it is that it's they use the Netflix subscription model to buy, sell, and trade cards online. Okay. So what that means is you pay one flat fee per month as low as $9. You don't even have to use promo code for me. Like don't just try it out. Here's the thing. If you just wanna buy cards, you don't need to pay that $9 a month. It's free if you just wanna make an account and just buy on their platform. I think that's fantastic. We talk about, reputable sellers, reputable transactions, like not getting scammed, not getting screwed over. My card post, it like, I don't wanna say it's like 100% guarantee that, that every transaction you're gonna make is gonna be perfect, but I have made quite a number of transactions and they've all been seamless. And so my testimonial in a way is that I'm a user of it and I post cards to, I will admit, maybe it's not the best for selling. At least for me, I think, your mileage may vary, especially if you have very liquid cards but you're not paying the FeeBay, the 15% to eBay, to my card post. All you do is pay your 3% for PayPal's goods and services, and you pay your subscription per month if you want to post your cards up. I found it a great place to trade because I'm not here to just be like, I need to make money off all of my cards. I have cards that people want. If they have cards I want, that gets to the crux of the hobby, to me, in my opinion. The crux of the hobby is trading. So they're called trading cards. I know it's crazy. Um, so for me, I got to know Mark Hill, the founder, CEO, president of My Card Post, whatever you want to call him, and he basically pitched me the idea, and he took a chance on me when not a lot of hobby companies knew about me or had any reason to even talk to me. And so I am forever grateful to him. And so this is just a thank you to him and to my card post for providing a great way for hobbyists, collectors, even flippers and all that. Like people want to transact online and they want to do it in a safe way. Please just try out my card post. Just go to the website, mycardpost.com, go to the search the marketplace, just type in random players that you want or random types of cards, right? I mean, I thought about making a reel about this and I'm definitely going over a minute and a half at this point, but I'm just fired up about this. I haven't done a live read in a long time. Um, if you're a repacker, I don't even know why you're listening to this because I doubt repackers listen to this podcast. But if you're a repacker and you want to go in to mycardpost.com and just put in downtown or downtowns, no, it's downtown. What am I saying? Kaboom. But the plural of those two. If you want to look for downtowns and kabooms, that's what I meant to say. You put in the search and you will see a bunch of cards. and then you make offers, and you can make not just an offer for one card, you can make multi-card offers. And I think that's really cool because you can't do that on eBay. You can't just be like, hey, I want to buy these 3 cards. You got to make individual transactions. And then, of course, in a real card show, you can trade. Whereas in eBay, you can't be like, hey, I'll trade you this kaboom for that downtown or something like that. So anyway, check them out. I think you would really like it. If you don't, let me know. I mean, I would love feedback in the YouTube, in the comments below, and in podcast. Just reach out to me at Denny_cards on Instagram. Thank you so much. And like I said, I'm not going to break again. We're going to go right into the subject of this episode, and that is East Coast National versus Culture Collision. But really, if you had to pit 2 shows together, it would be kind of like Culture Collision versus the Minnesota card show, which I don't know much about and I didn't go to, so I can't speak to it. And then, of course, Fanatics Fest and East Coast National, because I remember, and I think this was Cage Lawyer because he lives in that area or lives in New York, and he's been to both. And I saw him in both. I saw him at both National and, I mean, not National, East Coast National and Fanatics Fest. Um, Last year, he took a picture of the line to get into East Coast National, and it was long. It was, it's you kind of have to go up these steps, almost like a courthouse or Rocky Balboa steps to get into the, I forget what it's called, a convention center. It's called like the Westchester County Center. But you have to go up these steps, and there's a bunch of people on the steps, and they're in a long line. This year, when I went to the East Coast National, if you saw my vlog, you could see me literally just walk right up. It was Saturday morning, and Saturdays are supposed to be the busiest day out of a 3-day show. And I should say East Coast National was pit 3 full days because they are a full 3-day show against Fanatic Fest's 3-day show, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I went Saturday morning. There was like literally no line. I paid I think it was $15. I can't remember exactly what. And then I just walked in, and so I did like about 3 hours from like 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. 11:45. I was pushing it. I was trying to get to the Javits as quick as I could. The only reason I even went to the East Coast National was because my friend who I stayed with, who's not in the hobby, so he's like a civilian, to use a military parlance there. He lives in Westchester, like only 2, I guess, like Metro North stops away from the Westchester County Center. I can't even remember what the stop name is, but he lives, 2 stops away. And so I was like, I'm already all the way up here. It's free lodging. It is like 2 hours, 3 hours to get to the Javits from my friend's place because of the trains running and, you know, just walking and all the stuff. I was like, if I'm already all the way up here, why don't I do something crazy? Why don't I go to 2 shows in one day? Let me go to the East Coast National, and then let me go to Fanatics Fest. And that's what I ended up doing. So before I get to Fanatics Fest, before I get to Culture Collision, I'll just talk about the East Coast National. Um, It was very much a traditional show, meaning they out of those 3 shows that I just mentioned, East Coast National, Fanatics Fest, and Culture Collision, it's East Coast National is the one that is most like the National or the Chantilly show, in my opinion. Which makes sense because they're kind of like the same promoter team. And I don't know all their names and all that, but it's the same kind of like group that does the autograph signers and the card shows. The same dealers. They have the same Rolodex of dealers. It's the same general area of the country. I know it's big difference between Northeast and like Mid Atlantic and Rosemont, but this is the group of dealers that they want to stay in the East Coast for every national, right? I mean, if they could have their druthers, they would have it in Atlantic City every year if they could, or Philly, right? And I think they also do the Philly show, but don't quote me on that. But it's the group of dealers who have been around the hobby for quite a long time. They've seen the highs, they've seen the lows, they've weathered all the storms, and I give a lot of respect to that group. Um and yet they are also the group that I don't really frequent as much because and I don't want to stereotype here, but it's when you think about the dealer who has a lot of vintage baseball, or not even vintage, but just a lot of baseball, a lot of dollar or value bins, and is kind of like, they've been around a long time. I would love it if they had more 90s basketball, and some of them do, but they are more traditional. Okay, that's the way I want to couch it. They're just more of what the card show scene has been for a very long time. And I only spent 3 hours there. I think they said they had about 300 tables, and I don't know how many dealers, but some dealers have more than one table, and they were very pleasant. Some of them were not, but that's any show. You just have to find your type of dealer, that your type of, and there are definitely some kids who are, again, it's every show, but it's just one vignette that I have. Which, by the way, I definitely wanted to do this episode with Cage Lawyer, because he went to both Fanatics Fest and East Coast National. We just couldn't make it work. We just couldn't make it work. And look at me, I'm making this podcast episode about East Coast National literally more than a month since it happened. I mean, talk about timely, right? I mean, it's like at this point, people are probably like, "Who cares?" Like that show is so in the rear view. But again, I apologize. It just took me a while. I've had so much on my plate, but I'm glad I'm doing this after having done Culture Collision, because it's a nice juxtaposition between the two. So, having said that, this is a show that, again, like, I'm not going to disrespect the type of dealers, but you're, again, more traditional. Then you had some kids running around trying to do some flips. Cage, the reason I brought up Cage is he told a really good story in his podcast. I forget which episode, but about this kid kind of getting caught in the middle of, like, there was a dealer who was angry and yelling at him, and it was a really good story, and it was compelling. Having said that, I don't know the kid, but I saw in multiple instances just people coming up to dealer tables even like, "What's your best? How much is this?" You know, like, just, and then they would just like neg the card. They would just be like, "Oh, last did this, comps did this. How much room do you have?" It's like, I made a joke reel about kind of like working out to get ready for a card show, because it's like the vocabulary, or there's a very limited set of phrases I feel like we all say, not we all say, but these kids were saying. And it was really off-putting to me. It's almost like, they don't come to the table, they don't say hello, they don't try to strike a rapport, or say, they just come. This is very transactional, like, how much, what's your best, okay, and then they don't say goodbye or thank you for your time. They just leave, right? And I have a different approach, because one, I'm older, but also I just have a different way of talking to people, and maybe these kids will grow up and have more, emotional, I don't want to say emotional intelligence, but like more awareness, more social awareness. But it was really off-putting to me to see, because there are some shows that are considered more quote unquote transactional, where it's like, I hear Dallas is a very transactional show. A lot of deals get done, a lot of, liquidity, so to speak. And for me, and Chantilly's kind of like that too. For me, it's not so much about transactions. It's, yeah, like, yes, it's great to get cards you want, but it's also about like the people and the stories, and people willing to talk to you, or people just willing to. And sometimes you just have so many people at your table that you don't have time to have, not just cut content, but to have a discussion, right? It's like you're a vendor, and you have five people being like, "I want this downtown," or "Kaboom." You can't slow down. You just have to get into deal making mode. So I get that, but I just felt like there are some dealers, for all three shows, I had my little small satchel of slabs, and I would say, would you be willing to do a part trade, part cash deal? Um, Before I get to Fanatics Fest and Culture Collision, because I made quite a number of deals, and I really appreciated that. I I was really disappointed to have multiple dealers at East Coast National not even being willing to see what I had. As soon as I said those words, and again, it wasn't like immediate, like, hey, you buying. It's more of like, rapport building, kind of like, seeing what they like. Because I'm not going to say, hey, do you want to do a part cash, part trade deal to every dealer, regardless of what cards they have. Like, there got to be cards in their showcase that I want, right? And there were quite a number of dealers where they just had baseball and nothing else. And I'm like, there's nothing that I could really go for there, whether it was vintage or not. And so, I would kind of look and, see what I like. And then I would ask the questions and just try to probe. And I think one of the biggest mistakes, and again, these folks have done it a while, maybe to them it's not a mistake, but to some of these dealers, um, I think you're missing an opportunity to have a conversation, especially if no one's there. Like, I can imagine if you have 5 people there and you're not willing to, like, look at someone's cards, but if you are literally not serving or helping any member of the public, and someone comes up to you and tries to have a conversation with you and wants to maybe do a part cash, part trade deal, even if your primary motivation is, I need to sell all my cards, or I don't want to take on any cards. I don't want to look at this person's case. I think at the very least, saying the classic phrase, sure, I'll take a look, is a great way to keep that person at the table to potentially make a deal. And I think that was lost on some of the dealers that I talked to at the East Coast National. Granted, I wasn't there for more than 3 hours. I wasn't there for multi days. I didn't get to meet all the dealers or anything like that, right? I mean, but in my limited time there, I could count on more. Well, I'd say, yeah, about like 4 to 5 dealers who gave me that phrase, like, "No, I'm not interested," or, "I'm not looking to take on any more inventory," or some variation of, "I don't even wanna see what you have." And to me, that is a missed opportunity. And so, once that's said, will kinda look a little bit more, see if maybe I can make a offer on a card, but those are usually the same dealers where their comps, and I know not everything's about comps, but to me, they're just one data point and they can be a tether. But these are the same dealers who they're not willing to be flexible on their pricing. And we're not talking about pricing that's close to comps. We're talking about pricing that's like 150 to 200% of comps in some instances. Um, and so I was just like, I don't think we can really do anything here. So then you would just move on. But I'm not gonna put the blame. I'm not here to set any blame. But again, this is just my opinion, and to me, it's a missed opportunity. To those folks, for them, they're just like, doesn't matter. But I think as a promoter, you want to make sure. And again, I'm not putting blame on the promoter, but having a group of dealers who are willing to be um, willing to engage with the public more and to be maybe, more gregarious or more welcoming, I think would go a long way. And again, like, you have some people where that could be their first ever card show, and maybe they're not looking to buy to trade. And I'm not even talking about the trade up challenge. I'm talking like part cash, part trade deals. Maybe someone who goes to a card show for the first time, they're only looking at dollar bins and they just want 10 $1 cards. And maybe that's what they do. But I guess my whole thing is, there is I think maybe the baggage that I have is, even though I didn't go to card shows as a kid, I could kind of remember that type of person in the hobby, whether it was a local card show, owner, but it's the guy, because it's always a guy. It's the guy who is kind of like set in his ways and doesn't want to, like, isn't friendly, kind of brusque, but it's the guy who always says, "Oh, well, I just say it how it is, and that's just me, and I'm not changing." Kind of like the rigidity, and just not the most welcoming person to you know like a kid, right? Because I'm talking about being 11 and going into a card shop and just feeling like that steely daggers of the eyes, or just like the coldness. So I think that's why I have this kind of aversion, or kind of like, that's why I want to talk about it, because that's what it reminded me of. And I didn't even have that in my talking points. It's just something I just thought about just now. So I don't want to focus on just the negative about East Coast National. I did make some deals. I got to meet the Black Jaded Wolves team, because Sharon herself was at the at the national, at Fanatics Fest. And so I bought some cards from them. I did a part cash, part trade deal with I believe the gentleman's name is Chuck, who is friends with King of Cards, Kyle. And so, shout out to those individuals, because those folks I hold in high regard, and I think they're fantastic dealers and content creators and all that. So kudos to them. And yeah, it was good to see Cage there with his son. And I won't get into all of that, but it was just kind of great to see, just father son duos and all that. So that was East Coast National. I don't believe there was any food there. I know there were some autograph signers on the stage, kind of like almost like an auditorium. West Coast, not West Coast, Westchester County Center. It's really interesting. It was almost like I don't even know what to call it, like a multi-purpose, but it was like a, high ceiling. It was like almost like bleachers or balcony seating on the sides, almost like a theater or basketball game. I don't even know what to call it. And then they had this stage on the opposite end of the entrance, where they had autograph signers, and you had to get a ticket to go up and get your item signed. And there was even like a local, I guess, I don't know, like high school cheerleading team that was asking for donations so they could go traveling. And so, I think, I was just like, all right, I have changed from my admission. Here you go. Like, just, good luck with, going to your version of nationals. And, what am I bring it on is like your cheerocracy. Good luck with your cheerocracy. Um, so that was East Coast National. I took a train. I took the Metro North down from that to Fanatics Fest. Again, I could really only think of Cage Lawyer, who did both. Maybe there are others. Again, if you're watching on YouTube and you went to both, please comment below. If you are listening on podcast and you went to both, let me know. But oh, and I think a couple of people did reach out saying they went to both, like on different days, not on the same day, but on different days, like Friday and then Saturday, or Saturday and then Sunday. But I asked them if they wanted to be on the podcast, and these are folks who, they don't make content. They're just more quiet. They're just collectors. They're player collectors. They were more, I think, baseball, and they respectfully declined to come onto the podcast. It wasn't just me. It was just, they said they've never done it before, and they just weren't ready to do it now. But they did kind of tell me about their experiences at the national, at the East Coast National, and it was very similar to mine. Even though they did more baseball, they were like, yes, there are definitely some dealers who are willing to make deals, and some who, it seems like they literally do not make a single day a deal in the entire time. And again, I don't know. Many, people have different motivations as to why they are vendors, I suppose. So I took the train down, got there maybe around 1. I think the show ended, I think, that day at 5 at the Javits Center, Fanatics Fest. So Fanatics Fest, this is where, oh man, I'm already like almost at 40 minutes. Should I do the quick version? I have to do the quick version, because then I don't have time to talk about Culture Collision. I had so much fun at Fanatics Fests, and yet it wasn't like I was going around doing all the activations. I actually didn't even get to do the WWE WWE Prism, the WWE entrance thing. I wanted to do it. I just couldn't. I didn't have it ready. Didn't go into the UFC ring. Didn't shoot hoops. Didn't shoot the hockey shoot the hockey stick. What am I even saying? Slap shot. I don't know. I didn't do that. I didn't do baseball. I didn't do the 40-yard dash. I spent a lot of my time at Hobby Hall, and I made quite the number of deals. I sold a lot of my cards. Shout out to Giant Sports Cards, who are paying up to 90%, which was true. They really did. Because I was like, is this like 90% just for like downtowns? And they were actually playing probably the most strong out of anyone. I met some really good dealers, even though I didn't make deals. With some of them, shot some good content. I did go out into that area. I did put a helmet on, and throw the pigskin a little bit, I guess. But again, I didn't really watch the panels. I didn't do any of the like watching what they called the break of the decade or the century, whatever it was. I didn't watch that. It was kind of cool to see in the periphery, but I didn't. There was alcohol served. It was like $21 for like a cocktail. I was just like, and the lines were long, and I was like, this is New York City, and and so no, I did not spend any money on anything other than cards. And the only money, not the only money, but yeah, the money that I did spend, a lot of it came from the cards that I sold. I don't think I did any trades, but yeah, it was good to see a lot of the people who went to the national who I missed. People are saying they missed me there, and it was kind of great catching up with people. It was a lot of fun. And uh, what else happened? Trade Bleecker Trading. First time going to that shop. I made a trade with Jeff Wilson. Grant Williams interrupted that trade. Grant Williams, I know you don't listen to this podcast, but you know what you did. You know what you did last summer. But it was I mean, I'll just briefly talk about it because I put it up on my YouTube, but traded a now I can't remember, 2021 or 2022 Donruss Optic downtown PSA 10 of Josh Allen that I was valuing around 1100. And again, this is coming a month later, so I think that's gone up because he's played so well. Um, for a Panini Prism Silver rookie Victor Wembanyama, PSA 10, and cash. So it was going to be $100 or 160 depending on a coin flip, and I ended up winning. So I did Jeff Wilson. Probably only a 2% more chance of him listening to this podcast than Victor Wembanyama. No, not Victor Wembanyama. Grant Williams. Victor Wembanyama definitely does not listen to this podcast. But having said that, I had a great time. Bleecker Trading was really fun to be in. Just again, local card shops kind of being like the hub of activity and the gathering place for collectors and hobbyists. It was just really great. They hosted a trade night every single night. Um, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Even after that, when people are stranded in New York. So shout out to Bleecker and Mark Zablo. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to say the name. But him and his team, terrific job. Again, maybe a 2% more chance than Jeff Wilson in listening to this podcast. So it was a lot of fun. Had some amazing dinners and conversations. It was just I went to Cat's Deli. I didn't even I thought about making a separate little food vlog about that. But I just had so much other content to get to and prioritize. But Cat's Deli was my first time ever going to Cat's Deli, and it was absolutely everything that I mean, I had high expectations. I heard so much about it, and it blew my high expectations. That's how good it was. So now, if you're listening to this and you're even moderately hungry, I've completely made you salivate talking about the Reuben pastrami and the corned beef. Just amazing, huge sandwiches. Not cheap. I mean, literally, we're talking. See, my mouth is watering now. About like $28 for like a sandwich. But again, I mean, you could like literally just eat half and take the other half home. But silly me, I ended up buying two. I bought a Reuben and a corned beef, and I ended up eating half of each, which was already way too much. And then I ended up boxing the other two halves of each, and then I ended up giving it to Mr. Minty. So random, so random. So much fun though. And I think he wanted to give me money. I can't remember if he did or not, but I know that he offered, and I either took it or I said, I declined, but I was so full at that point. I don't even remember. But I hope he enjoyed it. Again, doubtful he's listening, but it's okay. Had so much fun. It was fantastic. Fanatics Fest. Um, just seeing the I I said I was gonna keep it short, and look, I'm just going forever about it. Um, there were a lot of cards that I wanted to buy there, So I'll just talk about one. It made me wanna level up my collection, not because yes, I will admit, FOMO, the kind of like the card jealousy or like wanting bigger cards. I just saw some amazing cards, and I would have seen them at the National too, but I it really lit a fire under me to want to transact more to kind of again, I don't really like the term like level up because it's kind of disrespectful to like the lower end of the hobby and the pool of cards, but it just wanted me to get it just wanted me to get cooler cards and not just 90s cards, just like a bunch of cards. It made me card hungry, but it also made me want to kind of shed myself of like the value bin cards or, make bulk deals to just say goodbye to like not do as much maybe eBay, 99-cent auctions on, under $20 eBay standard envelope cards. But it it definitely made me kind of more conscious about my time as well. And so I will say the one card that I can't get out of my head is Clark, Five Card Guys from the Cards to the Moon podcast. He had an Anthony Bourdain, Allen Ginter auto card. And it just like, it was so beautiful. And, there's so much like, he's got such a fan base, Bourdain. So that's the type of card that I would N that's not a flip card to me, that's a card that I would wanna keep forever, and yet I know because it's so expensive, so it was, like, about $2,000, that I would have to keep it for a little bit, but then because I'm not a collector of very expensive cards, I would, like, almost in a way get to rent it or keep it for a little bit and then say goodbye to it for a profit. That's not a card where I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna take a loss and I'm gonna have to," his market's dipped, you know, um he has so much meaning to so many people, and I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but that's a card when I first saw it, and I saw that like Thursday night, so like the same day, my travel day getting in to Fanatics Fest. I was like, I want this card so bad, and yet I have no means of getting it, even though Clark could probably even give me the buddy discount or something. I can't swing for this card. I just can't because I don't have the means. I don't have the budget. So it almost made me that card and that trip made me think, man, I want to in the future, if I can do things within the hobby and still be a budget collector and be fiscally responsible, I don't want opportunities like that to slip by. Because that's not a card that transacts often. That's not a Wemby silver rookie, which is half the value. It's like, like $1,100, but again, that's not a small card either, but it's just I didn't have the monetary funds to immediately spring for that card. So I'm gonna stop there. I can't believe I'm almost at 50 minutes. I'm gonna have to talk about Culture Collision, um, and I'm going to power through, no break. Much as East Coast National was traditional, and Fanatics Fest was not just a card show. It was the fanfare, the pomp and circumstances, everyone wanted to get into like the Jay-Z 40/40 club in the middle, but I mean that's the type of place not even Jeff Wilson and Ken Golden could get into. I don't know if Ken Golden got in there or not, but that's the type of place where hobby people just don't go into, right? Like Seablez isn't going into Jay-Z's 40/40 club, right? Much as the Blessing brothers are huge in our hobby, they I mean, no offense to them, but like they're nobodies in the A-list celebrity world, right? They're like none of us in the hobby are. Like even someone who has 100,000 followers, like King of Cards that I mentioned earlier. Like we are kind of like the when it comes to a Fanatics Fest type of event, like unless or until the hobby gets more cultural relevance and in the zeitgeist and is on the news more and is more relevant, like our hobby heroes or celebrities or our hobby A-list celebrities or kind of like more in people's view, they the sports world doesn't know us. They don't know us at all. So that's why I feel like sometimes like we need to in a way you know, look out for each other and understand like we're, all of us collectively, we're the, you know, I don't like this term, but it's the redheaded stepchild, right? It's kind of like that. No offense to the headed stepchildren of the hobby, but it's like Fanatics Fest was a party. It was so much fun. So you have traditional East Coast National, then you have the party of Fanatics Fest, and then Culture Collision. You have a party atmosphere with music, which again, if you're like a traditional dealer, you're like, and you don't like certain type of modern music, you're probably turned off by that. But I like I'm not a huge music aficionado, but I like the music. It didn't bother me. And I did finally have like noise canceling microphone for my content, so it didn't bother me as much. But you had you still had some vintage baseball. You still had some value bin and dollar bin box, dealers and all that. It's just more of like a shades of gray. It's like, yes, East Coast National, even though it's traditional, they still had ultra modern quarterbacks. They still had some basketball. They had some, they had the downtowns and kabooms, and yet they just had more. When I say they, East Coast National had more of the baseball and the vintage baseball and the autograph signers and no music. Then you have Culture Collision where there are no signers, there's music, there's less vintage baseball. There is some, but there's just less of it. And then you just have more, say, basketball and football. Another juxtaposition, contrast is East Coast National had, like, as far as I knew, there was like no card art. There was no custom card or card artists. They had memorabilia, they had helmets, they had that, but they didn't have anything like, you know, I apologize if I'm wrong, and again, it's just my viewpoint. I didn't see a single piggy banks in East Coast National. At Culture Collision, I saw multiple tables with multiple piggy bankses. Most of them owned by Prison God, but Tommy the Car Carver. Shout out to him. He had a booth or multi-table setup with not just his cards but cards of other people. And I just cut an episode with him, episode 89 with him. And so I won't go into all of that, but you had again, I don't remember the food options at East Coast National. I don't think there were any, and Fanatics Fest had a lower level with like some food options. I was mostly at the Starbucks, but Culture Collision had, it's Atlanta. You have to have Chick-fil-A. There was a Chick-fil-A stand outside. They had some food options outside. They had some drink options outside, and they were in this Cop Galleria, which is next to a mall that had food options. Remember this wonderful New Orleans restaurant that Tommy the Car Carver and I went to, which was like so affordable and yet so delicious. Copeland, shout out to Copeland, which is walking distance from Cards HQ, which Cards HQ is right next to Truist Park, where the Atlanta Braves played, which is where the Battery is, which is where I went after Culture Collision at the behest of Prison Goddess, who was like, you should go check out the Battery if you have some time before the airport, which I'm so glad that I did. And so, again, kind of like a lot of activity, not just the cards. East Coast National, in my opinion, it was like just the cards plus autograph signers, but like just the cards. Traditional, pure, like quote unquote pure card show. Fanatics Fest party, definitely card show was like not an afterthought, but it was like, just not, that wasn't the reason why a ton of families came through those doors. Um, Culture Collision was not traditional. It was more modern. It was kind of like between Fanatics Fest and East Coast National, where it was like a party atmosphere. They had the basketball. Of course, there was no 3-on-3 basketball, which the East Coast National, like, was just cards. Culture Collision, they had sneakers. They had, I bought jewelry for my wife there, and there's just a lot of things going on. But it wasn't also like the 40/40 club in the middle. It wasn't Jay-Z and a ton of celebrities rolling through and athletes rolling through and people just buying tickets to see if they can, do a WWE entrance. So Culture Collision was kind of like in between those two. I don't want to say extremes, but the two kind of like polar opposite ends of the spectrum of you know, um pure I don't want to say pure, but a traditional card show, and like where I see kind of card shows going, which is a more modern, updated version where it's not just about the cards. So um I I think we're gonna keep this under an hour. I can't believe I've been talking for this long. It's been way too long. I shouldn't go this long without. I mean, I have a podcast, I have a platform, and yet I am taking way too long in between solo episodes and in between episodes. The next two, so this is my transition because I am going to get us out before an hour, before the hour mark. I'm really proud to say that having said all of this, my aim for the next two episodes is to talk so much less. For some of you, that's going to be really great because you're like, just give me the guests. So this next episode, I actually don't know which one's going to happen first, but of the next two episodes, one of them, it's going to be my guest is going to be Prism God. It's going to be post show thoughts, and I want to have him talk a lot. I'm going to just try to be the interviewer and the host to just kind of have my guests talk about as much as they want about Culture Collision 5 that just happened, and Culture Collision 6 that's going to happen in January 2025. We also, I'm really happy. This is the first time I'm ever doing this because I've done the one guest, plenty of times. I don't even think I've had two guests on at the same time before, but my StreamYard does allow it. But I'm gonna have three guests, and two of them are vendors, and one is just a member of the public, but he's also a content creator. Three guests who have collectively gone to literally every single show. I guess maybe not the Minnesota show because that was the one that was uh, uh not pit against, but it was the same weekend as Culture Collision. But they went to collectively the National, East Coast National, Burbank, Dallas, um, Philly show that just happened this past weekend. I'm missing so many. There's so many shows, but I'm gonna have them on to talk about all of them, talk about all the good, the bad, the ugly, the burnout, if they feel it at all, or if they don't. I think some of them are full-time dealers where they derive their entire, living off of sports cards. And I think that's a big factor as to whether there's a burnout or not, I guess. But we'll see. We'll hear from them. So that's going to be a fun episode. I'm really excited. It's going to be my first ever, like, I don't even want to call it roundtable. I don't even know. I mean, but it's going to be like a regional card show roundup, or it's going to be kind of like a group podcast. So I'm really excited for that. And so the next two episodes are going to be, I hope that you really enjoy them. I hope you enjoy this one. Let me know. DM me on Instagram and tell me if I talk way too much, which actually I don't know how much of that I can help, but I can. I don't edit this. I don't edit this. It's just I press play. I maybe pause once or twice, and we just go. So hope you enjoyed listening to this, and I really hope that you enjoy the next two episodes that are going to come. And then after that, I don't know what's going to happen. We're barreling towards 100. I feel like I'm getting better, but sometimes I just feel like, two steps forward, one step back. But thank you for being part of this journey with me. It's just so much fun, and I love this, and I miss this. And hope you guys have a wonderful hobby day, weekend, whenever you're listening to this. And I'll see you in the next one. So until then, have a wonderful time in the hobby.